All glories to the lotus feet to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji ki jai. Thank you all so much for being here for this wonderful Vasant Panchami celebration. The Lord is as beautiful, more beautiful than ever in their yellow outfits. So I want to thank the pujaris who dressed the deities so nicely this morning and the devotees who cooking the nice offering for the Lord, and all of you for being here and making this morning program so nice. So we have a slight change in plans, but we're very fortunate that basically Caitanya Prabhu did 4 programs and lots of meetings, and so he was needed to take a little bit of space, and so he's asked Her Grace Prabhupada Priya Prabhu to give the class today. So let's give her a big Hari Bo. Very grateful and happy to have Prabhupada Priya Prabhu here to give the class today. And then this evening, the Sunday feast class will be given by His Grace Caitanya Prabhu as well. So please come back for that as well. And ask everybody to please scoot up. There's no tables and chairs today, so please let's scoot up close so Mother Prabhupada Priya doesn't feel by herself. And if you haven't yet, please turn off your cell phones so we can create a nice space to all hear together. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari. Oh. All right, Krishna. So today we're going to be reading from Caitanya Caritamrta. So let us do the invocation for that. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai. So welcome everybody to this morning's class. Today is a very special day, as Nrsimha Prabhu announced. It's Vasant Panchami, which is the first day of spring on the Vedic calendar, the Vaishnav calendar. So this is a big, I lived in India for 19 years, and this Vasant Panchami is a very big day. It's a very joyous celebration because the winter is short, but a little intense in Vrindavan, and no one has heating in their house, and it gets to be almost freezing, so you're just cold all the time. And so spring, any sign of spring is like, yes, warmth that's coming back to my life. And so all the deities of Vrindavan wear yellow that day, and all the devotees also wear yellow that day, so I tried to find something close to yellow. And so you go to even the men pull out their yellow kurtas, and so it's this very festive. You know, yellow is one of those bright, beautiful, enlivening colors. It's a color that's symbolic of the mode of goodness, and it's just fresh. It's exhilarating to look at, right? When you look at the deities, wow, blood yellow. And in Mayapur, they get saffron. They get like saffron, and they soak it, and they make a deep yellow solution, and then they put it on the gopi's face, so then the white marble becomes yellow. So they're literally yellow from head to toe. Their arms, everything are yellow. Of course, Krishna's black. You can't do much with him, but all the gopis are yellow. So it's quite stunning when the curtains open and you just see everything. Yellow flowers, yellow clothes, yellow complexions. It's the one day that Radharani shows her real golden hue of her actual form. So it's very beautiful. And also springtime, of course, is a time of rejuvenation. Right? It's a time when the world comes out of its state of dormancy. Like now you look around and you see all the trees are bare, right? All the deciduous trees are just bare. And I was wondering one day, I was thinking, what do the trees do in the winter for so many long months? Because they don't eat, basically, right? Because trees get their food by photosynthesis when the leaves, when light shines on the leaves. But if there are no leaves, then what do? They're just starving. So yeah, they enter into this state of dormancy. And they're just living off some reserves of food stored in the roots. Many animals in winter also, they go into hibernation, right? They become kind of like dormant, so their lives sort of stagnate. And so when spring comes, then it's time to wake up, right? The groundhog comes out of his hole. The bears wake up. The trees start sprouting little green, yellowish green new leaves. So it's a time when come out of a period of dormancy and come into a time of awakening. And that's also so symbolic for us, because here in the material world, most of us are sleeping souls, right? We're in the state of spiritual dormancy. Prabhupada uses that kind of language. Of course, now that those of us who are sitting here are listening to this class, we're starting to wake up, right? At least the alarm clock is going off, and we're kind of like, right? We're slowly waking up. But we want to, when we're fully awake, then we understand who we are, what our purpose is, what we need to do. And so we're trying very hard to wake up. So that's the blessing of Vasant Panchami, that on this special day, first day of spring, may we all spring into action in devotional service. May we all wake up to our original identity. Srila Prabhupada says that we are all originally Krishna conscious entities, but we're covered. So we just need to take off the coverings. It's like now the Krishna House devotees are working on Kalachandji's garden. So they went in there yesterday, and you know, anyone who's a gardener, the garden lies fallow for some months over the winter, And during that time, all kinds of things accumulate. There's leaves and sticks that fall off the trees. There's garbage that blows in there. And then there's all just the stuff from the previous harvest. There's a rotten pumpkin and a bunch of vines and, all these things there in the garden. So when we wake up, the first thing we have to do is do some cleaning, right? So springtime means spring cleaning. We spring clean the house, we do a maha clean. We spring clean the garden, take out all the refuse and debris, and start working the fields and fertilizing and doing the planting. So in the same way, when we start awakening to Krishna consciousness, the first thing we need to do is clean the heart, right? By doing all these purifying processes of bhakti, like hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy names, taking prasadam, associating with devotees, worshipping the deity, coming to the temple, living and visiting the dhams. So these things are cleaning the garden of our hearts so that the seed of bhakti can grow. Sometimes there's like a perennial plant. You don't have to plant the seed. The bulb is there or something is there. The roots are there and it starts to sprout. Or a bush that maybe all the leaves fell off. Now it's going to, or a tree that even if like a pine tree, even that the leaves, like an evergreen tree, still there's going to be growth. You see that on the end of the dark green twig, there's some light green growth. So it's a time of growth. So on this day of Vasant Panchami, let's take a renewed determination to clean our hearts and to grow spiritually, to extend our limbs and reach out to the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is actually, it turns out that the text that we're studying today from Caitanya Caritamrta it's about the Buddhists. So whoever was here last week, you got to hear about the 9 points of the Buddhist philosophy. And Lord Chaitanya is traveling to the holy places. He's traveling around South India, and he's meeting all different kinds of people. And so many different philosophers and people from different religious orientations, they're approaching him and arguing with him and trying to defeat him, because that was kind of the culture in those days, that everybody had a different philosophy, and they would argue and they would have these debates based on logic and spiritual principles, and they'd bring up Shastric references, and they would debate with each other, and then whoever lost the debate had to accept the person who defeated them as their guru. And we heard a good example of that this morning from Gopal Prabhu was reading about the life of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. So he was telling the story of how Gadadhar Pandit was taken by his friend Mukunda to go see this great soul, great devotee that he'd never met. But Pundarik Vidyanidhi was disguising himself as a materialist, and he was surrounded by all kinds of sense gratification. And so when Gadadhar Pandit saw him like that, he thought, what kind of a devotee is this? Okay, I get, maybe he's a devotee, but he's a materialistic devotee. Maybe he's a Prakrita Bhakta. He's a neophyte. He's still attached to material comforts and things. He hasn't quite understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So he didn't say anything, but he was thinking that. And then Mukunda could kind of understand that Gadadhar was like having some doubts. And so he read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that was talking about how Krishna was so merciful to his demon Putana, that even though she came to kill him, he accepted her tiny little tinge of bhakti and basically elevated her to the highest spiritual plana of Goloka to serve him personally. So when Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard that, then he started exhibiting all these wild symptoms of ecstasy. He was just tearing things apart and jumping around the room and crashing into things and smashing things, and then he fell unconscious because he was so ecstatic in his mood of separation from Krishna. And then Gadadhar was like, whoa, I haven't seen this level of Krishna consciousness in my life, So then when Pundarik Vidyanidhi came back to his external consciousness, then Gadadhar surrendered to him, paid obeisances in the dust of his lotus feet, and asked him if he would accept him as his disciple. So like that. So we're going to see an example here where the Buddhists are defeated by Lord Chaitanya, but they're not like Gadadhar Pandit. They don't become submissive, at least not initially. They actually become resentful, and they want to do something. They're sore losers, basically. They're defeated, but they don't want to admit defeat, and they want to instead do something nasty to the person who defeated them. So let's hear about this. Do you have the thing up there? It's Madhya Lila chapter 9, text 50. Okay, good. So let's read. Bodhacharya Nava Prashna Sabha Utaila. Dridha Yukti Tarke Prabhu Kanda Kanda Kaila. Bodhacharya Nava Prashna Sabha Utaila. Dridha Yukti Tarke Prabhu Kanda Kanda Kaila. Bodhacharya Nava Prashna Sabha Utaila. Dridha Yukti Tarke Prabhu Kanda Kanda Kaila. Bodhacharya Nava Prashna Sabha Utaila. Dridha Yukti Tarke Prabhu Kanda Kanda Kaila. Bodhacharya Nava Prashna Sabha Utaila. Dridha Yukti Tarke Prabhu Kanda Kanda Kaila. Let's do the word for word. We can do this all together. Bodha Acharya, the teacher of the Buddhist cult. Nava Prashna, 9 different types of questions. Sabha, all. Utaila, raised. Dridha, strong. Yukti, argument. Tarke, with logic. Prabhu, Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Kanda Kanda Kaila, broke into pieces. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The teacher of the Buddhist cult set forth the 9 principles, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu broke them to pieces with his strong logic. There's no purport. We'll just go ahead. So we won't repeat all these, but if you want, you can recite them together with me. Darshanika Pandita Sabaya Paila Parajaya Loke Hasya Kare Bodha Paila Lajabaya. All mental speculators and learned scholars were defeated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when the people began to laugh, the Buddhist philosophers felt both shame and fear. Purport. These philosophers were all atheists, for they did not believe in the existence of God. Atheists may be very expert in mental speculation and may be so-called great philosophers, but they can be defeated by a Vaishnava firmly situated in his conviction and God consciousness. Following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the preachers engaged in the service of ISKCON should be very expert in putting forward strong arguments and defeating all types of atheists. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Prachardane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyachade Shatarane. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada is giving us a direct instruction here that all preachers engaged in the service of ISKCON should be very expert in putting forward strong arguments and defeating all types of atheists. This is something that Srila Prabhupada taught by his example, is that he was very expert in defeating any kind of opposing arguments, and he would become very strong. We see that in his purports whenever he's speaking against Mayavad philosophy or speaking against atheism or anything. So, and he trained his followers this way. In fact, he would have his pastimes of having one of his disciples come and present some view of this scientist or this philosopher, and then Prabhupada would have and he would ask the disciple to not just say what the view was, but to take the role, kind of do a role play, and take the role as if he was speaking as an atheist or speaking as a scientist or some a philosopher who was not very theistic. And then Srila Prabhupada would just systematically smash all the arguments and defeat him, and the disciple would be like, but this, and Prabhupada would be like, no, but it would become very animated. So there's a book that's written as a result of that. What's it called? Dialectical Spiritualism or something like that. Yeah, there's a book where those conversations are recorded. And so Prabhupada trained his disciples, and so we a lot of Prabhupada's disciples who were very stalwart, in this regard, that they would speak very strongly against opposing views. I know that His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj was a very strong preacher in this way, and he could dismantle anything, any argument that was opposing Vaishnava principles or Vaishnava philosophy. And another one, Hridayananda Maharaj, was also very known for this. There's one famous interview where he's on television, I think, right, live with this anti-cult person, and he's just hammering. This anti-cult person is coming up with these arguments, and he's just like, boom, like very calmly, very logically. And you see how the anti-cult person is getting really emotional. He's getting disturbed. He starts making personal attacks and things. And then it's Hridayananda Maharaj is there with, who's the other person? Balavanta Prabhu? I think so. Anyways, they're taking turns, but they're just like, nope. And by the end, there's nothing that the anti-cult person Prabhu can say. He's just gone. So it's very glorious. Actually, there's one line in his Hridayananda Maharaj's Pranam mantra, the second part of the Pranam mantra, that says Dushte Siddhanta Nasane. So literally, it means that he is the destroyer. Nashane means the destroyer of Dushte Siddhanta, or bad philosophies, deviant philosophies. So that was written into his Pranam mantra. So yeah, we need to follow in the footsteps of these great personalities, Srila Prabhupada and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and equip ourselves with the philosophical principles and the shastric references to be able to very solidly defeat any kind of opponents to Vaishnavism. And also so that we ourselves don't get confused. Because if we don't know the philosophy and somebody comes with some deviant philosophy, we may not even recognize it to be deviant. We may think, oh, is that really what it is? And we may be swayed, or we may be confused. And we may even pass on that, philosophy to others thinking it's correct. Or we may trouble others with our doubts, and if they can't resolve them, they may also have doubts, and then we all become confused and doubtful and lose our faith and lose our determination to, follow the process that Srila Prabhupada's given us. So that's why we need to educate ourselves in the philosophy and in Shastra and understand what we're doing and be convinced and be able to convince others and be determined. So Srila Prabhupada is calling upon us here in this purport to do that. So let's go on. Let's see what happens to these Buddhists. The text 52. Prabhu ke Vaishnavajani bodha gare gela sakala bodha militabe kumantrana kaila. The Buddhists could understand that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a Vaishnava, and they returned home very unhappy. Later, however, they began to plot against the Lord. So the plot thickens. Apavitra anna eka talite bhariya Prabhu anke nila mahaprasada baliya. Having made their plot, the Buddhists brought a plate of untouchable food before Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and called it Mahaprasadam. So this is very bad. Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about how people who are not Vaishnavas cannot offer food to the Lord. Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Patram pushpam phalam toyam, yo me bhakta prayachati, Tad aham bhakti paritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So he uses the word, he says, anyone who offers me with love and devotion a leaf, flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. In that verse, he uses the word bhakti twice. Okay, he says, bhaktya, yome bhaktya prayachati, and then he says, tadaham bhakti uparitam. So he's emphasizing the bhakti. He said, if someone offers me, even if it's a simple offering, but it's offered with love and devotion, with bhakti, I'll accept it. So he says, and what he says, I'll accept the offering, but what he's saying in the second reference to bhakti is, what he accepts is the devotion, right? And then the offering is just part of that devotion. So if it's offered with devotion, then I accept the devotion. And accepting the devotion, I eat the food. Ashnami literally means to eat. I eat it. So someone who doesn't have devotion, then what's Krishna going to accept? Because what he accepts is devotion. So if there's no devotion, devotion is like the vehicle that carries the food. And if there's no devotion, then the vehicle is like the vehicle has a flat tire. And so the food doesn't go to Krishna. Krishna doesn't get it. He doesn't accept it. So there's no way that these Buddhists could have offered food to Krishna and, come out with Mahaprasad. And apart from that, they don't know how to cook according to Vaishnava principles of cleanliness and, pure ingredients. And so the food that they offered was not offerable by any stretch of the imagination. And so it wasn't at all Mahaprasad. They were basically lying to the Lord. And they were trying to just contaminate him. They were trying to, do something nasty. So let's see what happens. Text 54. Ena kale mahakaya eka pakshi aila tonte kari anasaha tali lana gela. When the contaminated food was offered to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, a very large bird appeared on the spot, picked up the plate in its beak, and flew away. So this is how Krishna protects devotees, right? They came with this untouchable food. They said, this is Mahaprasad. So in one sense, Lord Chaitanya, of course he's the Lord, he knows everything, but he didn't know, he could have assumed that maybe it is Mahaprasadam, and maybe they're grateful that I corrected them and I put them on the right path, and they're offering some, honor to me and some gratitude and devotion by this Mahaprasad, so let me accept their little gift. But even if that happens to someone who's not the omniscient Supreme Personality of Godhead, then Krishna is going to make some arrangement to protect. So a bird came along, picked up the plate, and flew away before Lord Chaitanya could touch the food. Right, and then Bodha ganera apare anapade amedyahaya Bodhacharyera mataya talipadila bhajiya. Indeed, the untouchable food fell upon the Buddhists, and the large bird dropped the plate on the head of the chief Buddhist teacher. When it fell on his head, it made a loud sound. So that backfired. They wanted to contaminate the Lord, and they're the ones that ended up getting contaminated with this this bad food just fell all over them, and then the plate, boom, on the head of the Buddhist. All right. Text 56. Terache padila tali mata katigela murchita hana acharya bhumite padila. The plate was made of metal, and when its edge hit the head of the teacher, it cut him, and the teacher immediately fell to the ground unconscious. Wow, so this got serious. He was seriously injured by this plate. Aha kara kari kande saba shishya gana sabe asi prabhur pade laila sharana. When the teacher fell unconscious, his Buddhist disciples cried aloud and ran to the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu for shelter. So now they realized not only were they philosophically defeated, but even practically they were defeated. They realized that we cannot do anything against this person. This person is like way too powerful in every way for us to do anything. We have only one option left, and that is surrender, which they should have done the day before. But anyways, better late than never. Text 58. Tumita ishvara sakshat kshama aparadha Jia Mare Guru Karaha Prasada. They all prayed to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, addressing him as the Supreme Personality of God himself, and saying, Sir, please excuse our offense. Please have mercy upon us and bring our spiritual master back to life. So they changed their tune. That's why it's good to treat everybody nicely, because you never know when you're going to have to approach that person for help, right? Text 59. Prabhu kahe sabe kaha Krishna Krishna Hari, Guru karne kaha Krishna mama ucha kare. Translation. The Lord then replied to the Buddhist disciples, you should all chant the names of Krishna and Hari very loudly near the ear of your spiritual master. So this was all a preaching program of Lord Chaitanya to glorify the potency of the holy names and to convince them all to chant the holy names and make them all into Vaishnavas. So this was like part 2. So the first thing was defeat them, show them that their Buddhist philosophy is totally this atheistic philosophy of thinking that, there's no soul, there's no God, there's that, the goal of life is just nothingness, voidism, nirvana. So first he defeated that, and now he's giving them the Yuga Dharma. So that's what you don't do. You don't follow the atheist Buddhist philosophy, and this is what you must do. Chant Hare Krishna. And this is the thing that's going to save you. So, Koma Sabar Guru Tabe Paibe Chaitana Sababodha Mili Kare Krishna Sankirtana. Shri Krishna Sankirtan Ki Jai. By this method, your spiritual master will regain his consciousness. Following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advice, all the Buddhist disciples began to chant the holy name of Krishna congregationally. So the Sri Krishnas, they were doing Sankirtan there, chanting very loudly, singing the holy names of Krishna into the ears of their unconscious spiritual master. Text 61. Guru karne kahe sabe Krishna Rama Hari, Chaitanya Pana Acharya Bale Hari Hari. We're getting so many nice holy names here. Translation. When all the Buddhists chanted the holy names of Krishna, Rama, and Hari, the Buddhist teacher regained consciousness and immediately began to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. So there's a nice purport here. I'll read this. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that all the Buddhist disciples were actually initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And when they chanted, they actually became different persons. At that time, they were not Buddhists or atheists, but Vaishnavas. Consequently, they immediately accepted Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. Their original Krishna consciousness was revived, and they were immediately able to chant Hare Krishna and begin worshipping the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So the winter of their ignorance and atheism was over, and the spring, their awakening to Krishna consciousness, had begun. And Prabhupada says that when they chanted, they actually became different persons. There was a big and very fast transformation because they were receiving the holy names directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is none different from Krishna, in his most merciful form, the form of a devotee, who came for the purpose of teaching this process of chanting Hare Krishna. So this is the meaning of Harinam initiation. First initiation by the spiritual master is that the spiritual master gives us the Hare Krishna mantra and empowers us to chant it. So at the time of first initiation, which is called Harinam initiation, then we take the vow to chant the Hare Krishna mantra at least 16 times every day on beads. And says here, so at that time, although the devotees already know the Hare Krishna mantra before that and are already chanting the Hare Krishna mantra before that, but that's the time when formally the holy name is given, is officially given in an authorized way by the spiritual master. So when Lord Chaitanya taught these Buddhists the Hare Krishna mantra, then he gave them the mantra, he gave them the process, and Prabhupada says that this is this was their initiation. He initiated them into the chanting. So then they became Vaishnavas. So here the Prabhupada continues. It is the spiritual master who delivers the disciple from the clutches of Maya by initiating him into the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In this way, a sleeping human being can revive his consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, so again, we have this link to the Vasant Panchami, the awakening from this dormancy, right, and coming to life again. So in this way, a sleeping human being can revive his consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna. There's that nice song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Kota Nidra, Jayo Maya, Pisha Chira Kole. It says that so long you've been sleeping in the lap of the witch of Maya, or the illusory energy, the material energy. So wake up, sleeping souls. Lord Chaitanya is calling. And he says, Eneche Aushadi Maya, Nashibara Lagi, Harinam Mahamantra, Lao Tumi Magi. He says to take the medicine. His holy name is like a medicine that will cure you from the disease of illusion. And Harinama Mahamantra. So just take this Hare Krishna Mahamantra and chant it, and everything's going to be all right. Prabhupada continues. In other words, the spiritual master awakens the sleeping living entity to his original consciousness so that he can worship Lord Vishnu. This is the purpose of Diksha, or initiation. Initiation means receiving the pure knowledge of spiritual consciousness. One point to note in this regard is that the spiritual master of the Buddhists did not initiate his disciples. Rather, his disciples were initiated by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they in turn were able to initiate their so-called spiritual master. This is the parampara system. The so-called spiritual master of the Buddhists was actually in the position of a disciple, and after his disciples were initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they acted as his spiritual masters. This was possible only because the disciples of the Buddhist Acharya received the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Unless one is favored by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the disciplic succession, one cannot act as a spiritual master. We should take the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual master of the whole universe, to understand how one becomes a spiritual master and a disciple. So that's very interesting, isn't it? The disciples of the Buddhist, they became disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his initiated disciples, and now they were chanting the holy name. They were Vaishnavas. So then Lord Chaitanya engaged them in giving Harinam initiation to their so-called guru, previous guru, who was not a guru at all, because guru means one who has real spiritual knowledge. And because he didn't have real spiritual knowledge, he wasn't actually a guru. Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada's making this point that one cannot act as a spiritual master unless one has taken the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and is exemplifying those. So he was pretending to be a guru, but he wasn't actually a guru. And when his disciples were initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then now they were connected to Lord Chaitanya. They'd received the instructions, they were applying the instructions, so they became qualified to be gurus to this person who was not a guru, and now became their disciple. So they went and chanted the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in his ears, they gave him Harinam initiation on the spot, and then he became a Vaishnava. So that's what it says here in text 62. Krishna Bali Acharya Prabhure Karena Vinaya Dekya Sakala Loka Haila Vismaya. When the spiritual master of the Buddhists began to chant the holy name of Krishna and submitted to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the people who were gathered there were astonished. Happy ending of this pastime, that they all became Vaishnavas, including the Guru also became a Vaishnava, and they were freed from their malice, their envy of Lord Chaitanya. They surrendered to him, and they accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a very sweet and instructive pastime. Another way in which this is very helpful for us is to show us how to react and how not to react when somebody defeats us, right? Because we're practicing Krishna consciousness and we have the highest philosophy, but we also have our, ideas. We also have our own ideas about what's best, what's right, what's the proper way to do things. And so, we're still heavily influenced by our conditioning, by our anarthas, and we can become proud of our own perspective, our own ways of doing things. And so if a senior devotee who has, a higher degree of realization in Krishna consciousness comes to us and corrects us, sometimes it's hard to take. Just like these Buddhists, they didn't take it well, even though Lord Caitanya had corrected them very soundly, but they were not happy. So sometimes if the spiritual master or a senior devotee or even a friend, a well-wishing friend comes and addresses some way in which we're not behaving properly, or just our attitude is inappropriate, or just some slight philosophical misunderstanding, we may be, we may react out of ego, like, oh, who are you? Who are you to talk to me like that? Or, whatever, we may just, our egos may become inflamed, and we may retaliate. We may try to retaliate in some way, either verbally argue, or just kind of like reject the person in a sense, and distance ourselves from the person, go away grumbling and thinking, and having a resentful attitude like that. So that doesn't, it's not good for us, right, as we see here, because that's what the Buddhists did, and then it turns out that it backfired. So that kind of attitude always ends up backfiring for us, especially if we try to take it a step further and allow that resentment to manifest in some kind of act of retaliation against the person, some kind of vengeful sort of activity or comment or criticism. Then it's always going to end up making us look like fools. Right? So we have to be very careful about the ways in which our own pride and ego can cause difficulties in our spiritual progress, in our Vaishnava relationships, in ways that it can lead to us committing offenses against devotees, and those offenses are dangerous because they're like mad elephants that come into our spiritual garden, right? We were talking about gardening and how we want to clear away. We want to actually clear away all the debris, and we want to plant seeds of beautiful flowers and nice vegetables and things, and we want those to grow for the pleasure of Krishna. So in that way, we're trying to cultivate our bhakti. We're trying to cultivate the bhakti lata bij within our hearts. But if we offend devotees, then it's like the mad elephant let loose in the garden, and it'll just crush everything. All the delicate little creepers, the little creeper of our devotion becomes crushed. So, yeah, we have to be careful and keep ourselves in good association. Right? That's in Caitanya Caritamrta, in the section where it talks about this cultivating the creeper of devotion and the danger of the mad elephant of Vaishnava aparada, or offense to devotees. It says that to protect ourselves from this mad elephant coming into the garden, we need to build a strong fence around our garden so that protect it from other predators and things like that might nibble on the tender leaves of our creeper of devotion. And he said that offense is the association of devotees, of nice devotees. So try to keep ourselves in good association, and always be introspective and wary of our own defects, aware of our own defects, and wary of the trouble that they can get us into if we act on them. And always be praying to Krishna to free us of those things, to purify our hearts of these bad qualities of envy, of pride, of self-righteousness, of material attachments, and to open our hearts to receive the wisdom of self-realized souls, and to make us humble so that we can accept correction. Because we don't want to stay wrong, If we're wrong, we want to be corrected. Otherwise, what's the use of being right or thinking that we're right when we're actually wrong? Right? So if we have an argument with someone and that person is actually right. Like they actually have the correct understanding, and we have some, Shri Radhakala Chandji ki jai. If we have some misunderstanding, or slightly deviant way of slightly deviant conception, then we may be very good at arguing on the basis of our misconception, defending our position. But if we win the argument, by intimidating the person or whatever, then that's actually a loss for us, right? It means that we remain stuck in our own misleading misinterpretations and misconceptions and deleterious attitudes, harmful attitudes. And then we stagnate. We just stagnate. And we're so convinced that we're right when we're wrong. So we don't want, that's not a good situation to be into. It's like being stuck in a ditch and not being able to get out. And then when people come and, hey, can I help you out of that ditch? Then you slap their hand away. No. In fact, you come down in my ditch. Right? That's what it's like. We try to convince people that we're right when we're not. And then we're like, no, you should believe what I believe, even though it's not true. So, yeah, we have to have an open heart and have an open mind and hear. Focus on hearing, right? They say that we have one mouth and two ears. Means we're supposed to listen more than we speak. So we should listen to senior devotees who have a realization of Shastra, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and then try to practice that. And then all these misconceptions also go away. It's like Krishna switches on the light, and then we can see we can see our darkness. We can see the difference between ignorance and knowledge, and real knowledge. So I'll end there and open up for questions. Yes, Prabhu? Prabhu, what's your name? Aram Karuna Das. Right. You did a nice kirtan.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Thank you for a wonderful class. I have two things to share. First is a question, and second is a comment, but I'll ask my question first. Many times we go to the very prestigious institutions like Stanford, Princeton. Now the Harvard is open for us because one of my good friends, Chaitanya Bhava, is there. So we go to the big institutions and preach over there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a devotee take excuse that, okay, I'm not good at Shastras, so I don't want to go and preach over there in those institutions. How can we, so I don't want to get out of the temple life, or I don't want to go out and preach. So how can we convince those devotees that we have to go and preach and respectfully spread the message?
So you want to convince devotees to go out to universities and preach? Okay. Yeah. Well, we need to be educated, right? So we need to understand the philosophy very well. And also when preaching to that kind of people, we need to also understand a little bit of their what they believe, right? So that we know what we know the opposition. And if you're going to take part in a debate, you need to understand, what are your arguments, what are the points that you want to make, and then you also need to anticipate what their opposing points, and then think of, more arguments to address each of their points. So, yeah, so we need to have those arguments prepared. We can't just go in and be like, all right, everyone, chant Hare Krishna because Lord Chaitanya said so, and he's a Yuga avatar, and they're going to be like, what, are you crazy? So we need to be able to connect with their understanding and we need to make it relevant to their point of view. Yeah, Nrsimha Prabhu. Another thing we can do is we can hear from devotees who we can hear from devotees who are experienced in that kind of preaching, right? So, there are many devotees like Bhaktivedanta Institute. There are many highly educated devotees who who specifically preach to scientists and highly educated people. They present Krishna consciousness. So we can listen to their lectures, their classes, their presentations to see like what do they do? What is their approach? How do they go into, how do they connect with these people, and how do they bring them up gradually to understanding?
Makes sense. But I was just focusing on the point, or in the class, or in the Chaitanya Charitamrta, that Mahaprabhu defeated the philosophy of Buddhist in a very, very nice way, but eventually they were still not convinced, and they tried to kill Mahaprabhu, or not kill, sorry, they tried to offer Mahaprabhu unoffered food or unoffered bhoga. But eventually what happened is that the Buddhist, the plate gone, the Buddhist priest, and he became unconscious. But then Mahaprabhu told one thing, that you should chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So it's very interesting to understand that they were still not convinced by the defeat, but they got convinced when Mahaprabhu asked them to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Yeah.
Do you want to share some?
Yeah, I mean, it requires some purification of the heart also. There are many people that will read books that are, acquainted with our philosophy, but they don't become devotees because they're not actually practicing. So there has to also be some, practice. So when we're preaching to hardcore, atheists or academics, it's difficult. It's probably the most difficult, preaching, kind of preaching, or audience to present Krishna consciousness to. Is very challenging. So yeah, if we go in with, give them some prasadam, invite them, to some way hear the holy names, then that helps. Purification of the heart.
This discussion was reminding me of when Tamal Krishna Maharaj was at SMU here in Dallas, and he, just by the way he went to school, I don't know exactly, but I think he got like straight hundreds, like not like straight A's, but like straight hundreds across his entire time that he was there. And people were so impressed by the way he carried himself. They ended up giving him an office as an undergrad at SMU. They gave him an office at the university, and he's made friends with so many of the professors, and he would invite them to the restaurant. And you hear his disciples talk about, he would like roll out the red carpet and host them so nicely. And so like, kind of like you're saying, he really met them kind of where they were at and found a way to connect with them. And then he did the same thing in Cambridge, from what I heard also. So and it just reminded me of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, also we can't go in like, you're an ignorant atheist and I'm here to, enlighten you, because, you're dealing with people who are, they've achieved a certain level of knowledge, and they really are convinced that they know a lot. And Srila Prabhupada, there's a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to one of his disciples that said that that you need to be very respectful to, educated people. He says specifically, and deal with them very carefully, because he says they tend to be a little proud, but then he says something to the effect that they deserve to be, And so it's not just that they're falsely proud, they actually have something to be proud of. That they've attained a high level of education, they're successful, they actually have knowledge superior to most people in the world. And so you need to be respectful and, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj was, right? He treated them like honored guests, like VIPs. And then, they respond to that. That helps.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Brahmatirtha Prabhu made the same point. He presented to us, he runs the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and so he did a presentation with some devotees. I think it was temple presidents, I can't remember, but he was saying the same thing, that, really give, respect them, because, Prabhupada said that they've earned that respect, and don't try to like smash them with our arguments, but treat them as respected people, because they've put in the work and the time and energy to study whatever they're studying, and like that you can kind of develop a relationship and share Krishna consciousness with them.
Yeah. I mean, we should respect everyone, but we should definitely respect people who, have positions like that in society. And also, it almost takes somebody who has, who is also at a similar level of education to really like, sit at the same table with them, to enter the conversation. So that's why it's important for devotees to also be educated, and then devotees who are educated to take advantage of their education to also share Krishna consciousness with similarly educated people. That was actually, see, Lord Chaitanya's strategy was that he took sannyas from a Mayavadi sannyasi in order to speak to the Mayavadis. Otherwise, the Mayavadis weren't going to accept him, because he was he was a Grihasta and he was a Vaishnava. He had no standing. So he didn't even attempt to talk to the Mayavadis from that position. But he thought, he said, they're not going to listen to me, they're just going to laugh me out of town. And so he said, in order for them to listen to me, I need to take sannyas, and I need to take sannyas from a Mayavadi, sannyas guru. And that's what he did. And as soon as he did, then he got invited to their lunch parties, he got invited to their, assemblies, and then they invited him to speak, they asked him to speak, and then he made them all devotees. So like that. So one time Hridayananda Maharaj was saying, this was way back in the 90s, he was saying that this Lord Chaitanya took sannyas to preach to the elite of society. At that time, the Mayavadi sannyasis were the elite. They were like the highest respected people in society. So he said that the highest, so that if we want to speak to highly respected people in society, like, these scientists and, philosophers and highly educated people, then we want people to listen to us, then we need to have we need to get the authority. That we need to be someone that they see as an authority that's worth listening to. So Lord Chaitanya took Mayavadi sannyas so that he would be seen as an authority, that everyone would come and pay obeisances to him and please enlighten us, please bless us, So who do people see as authorities of knowledge and PhDs? So on that, with thinking that way, he went back to school and he got his PhD. He convinced Tamal Krishna Maharaj to go back to school and get a PhD. And then as a PhD, he became a professor, and he was, he influenced so many people at high levels of education. He became a professor he was a professor at UF. He spoke and as a PhD, you get invited to speak at different symposiums and conferences to other academics, and even, people who are not in academia. You have a PhD in this subject, then please tell us. And then you speak Krishna consciousness. So, this is strategy that we can also follow. Stephen's on his way also. He got a degree in religious studies.
That's such an excellent point. And I've heard Hridayananda Maharaj say that before in a talk that he gave at the BI last year. And I just wanted to share a story of Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, who also similarly, he was inspired by Tamal Krishna Goswami and Hridayananda Goswami, and I think they had some actual correspondence, and they encouraged him to go back to school, and he has a PhD in religious studies, and he taught at a university in China for some time. And I was watching a video of Vyasa Puja offerings, and I saw this Chinese girl and I was she was explaining that she was actually his student at the university, and then she was very, they formed a relationship, and then she became his disciple, and I was just wow, that's so dynamic, and how else could you reach a person like that, in the middle of China, at some random university, and then now she's a Vaishnava. It's amazing that this kind of stuff is going on.
Yeah, we have devotees like Radhika Raman Prabhu. He's a professor of religion, and he's the head of the department, and he's influencing so many young people to believe in God, to, open their minds to spiritual philosophy, to be interested. Oh yeah, he was a student in Radhika Raman. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I know there's a girl too, her name's Brandy. She was at Krishna House Gainesville, and she was, I think, she had heard from Radhika Raman Prabhu in a class. All right, so let's do it. Let's all get educated. Or in some way, we need to, even if we're not going to get PhDs, although those of you who are inclined, go ahead. May Krishna empower you. But somehow or other become well versed in the in our philosophy, so that we're equipped to defeat others who have deviant philosophies or bogus philosophies. Within our movement, there are so many deviant philosophies that cause disturbances and controversies and hard feelings. And then, of course, outside, there's so many insane philosophies that, we need to be able to defeat. And even within our own minds, there, we're having our own arguments, our internal conflicts, what to do, what not to do, what's right, what's wrong. So we need to be very well versed, just for the sake of our own peace of mind, for the sake of peace within our society, for the sake of harmony within the world, and to be able to strongly establish this philosophy, the teachings of Lord Caitanya, which are the most sublime and wonderful and harmonizing principles out of any spiritual principles in the universe. Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur